We continue now at the top of Daf Tesvav Amud Aleph in Meseches Sotah. This is Sotah Daf 15a. The Gemara continues. It said umaktiro beklishares, and then you burn it in the klishares. And the Gemara asks, beklishares maktir, are you burning it in the klishares? We're going to go with Rashi's girsa here. Rashi's girsa says hachi garsinan umaktiro sal kadaitach. The question is, are you really maktiro? Do you really burn it at this point in time? V'lo garas atu beklishares makatir. Don't have the girsa that we have. That are you actually burning in the klishares? V'hachi kakashale. The question is as follows: maktiro sal kadaitach. Are you really burning it at this point in time? But it hasn't been salted yet. We're going to say, as the Tosefta continues, that you salt it and then you put it on the fire. You say that you see that the burning it is actually after the salting it. And so then the Gemara says, that's the girsa. The girsa we have, Rashi slightly different. It means you bring it up in the klishares, to burn it, after he salts it. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, he salts it and puts it on the fire, as Rashi just noted, like the pasuk says, like it's written in V'chol Karba Minchascha, Ba'melach Timlach V'gomer, it says all of your Karba Minchas, you salt it. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Karav HaKometz Shireh Nechal, and once the kometz is brought, so then the remainder of the Karba Mincha can be eaten. Minolan, from where do we know this? Tichsiv, like it's written, V'hiktar HaKohen es Azkarasu V'gomer, it says the Kohen burns the Azkara, that's a reference to the kometz. Uchsiv, and then it's written, V'hanoseres Min HaMincha, the remaining of that Karba Mincha, what remains, Li Aaron Ulavav, goes to Aaron and his children, it can be eaten by the Kohanim. Karav hakometz lemarked islay or lemarked islay. And then the Gemara notes, when we say the kometz is brought according to one master, according to his opinion, and according to the other master, according to his opinion, and the Gemara elaborates, the itmar, because it was learned the following, machlokas amoroim, hakometz me'emosai matir shirayim b'achilu. When you burn the kometz, at what point in time is the remainder now mutter to eat? Rabbi Chanina amar mishatishlot bo ha'or. Rabbi Chanina says it's from the time that the fire takes hold of the kometz. Rabbi Yochanan says mishatishlot or barubo. It's when the fire takes hold of the majority of the kometz. At that point in time, then the remainder becomes mutter. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. V'rashoyin hakohanim litein l'socho yayin v'shemen udvash. The kohanim are allowed to put into it, when they're eating it, they're allowed to add wine and oil and honey. And the Gemara says, my time, and what's the reason? Amar Kratz, because the pasuk says lemashcha. We understand lemashcha to mean legedula, for greatness, meaning they should eat it in a great fashion. Kederech shamelachim ochlen, in the same way that kings, that they would eat their food. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Vein asurna ela mil chametz. The prohibition only is that they should not allow it to become chametz. Techsiv, as it's written, lo seyafe chametz chel kam. We read the pasuk together, even though really after the word chametz there should be a pause. We read it all together. We darshan as follows. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, afilu chel kam, even their portion, even the portion that the kohanim are eating, lo seyafe chametz. Even that cannot be baked as chametz. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Kol ha-menachos v'chulu, all menachos, they require shemen and levona, they require oil and frankincense, except for the karba mincha of the sota. And the Gemara says, V'chol ha-menachos tunas shemen and levona, is that really true? Do all karba minchas require oil and frankincense? V'ha'iko minchas chote, but what about the minchas chote? The Rachmana Amar lo yosem ala shemen v'lo yiten ala levona. The pasuk says by the minchas chote, he doesn't put on their shemen, he doesn't put on oil, and he doesn't put on levona, he doesn't put on frankincense. Rashi says minchas chote. What's a minchas chote? Haba al chet demetame mikdash ushvuas ha'edus ushvuas bitoy. A minchas chote is brought on one of the following three sins: either someone who's tamei enters the Beis Hamikdash, or shvuas ha'edus is that the person takes an oath that he doesn't know testimony regarding some issue, and he really does know testimony. And shvuas bitoy refers to someone who takes an oath and doesn't fulfill the oath. Tichsiv hasam, it's written over there. This is in Sefer Vayikra Perek Hey. V'im lo sasek yadu l'shtei sarim. If he can't afford to bring the bird karbanos, so he brings the karba mincha. And again, it says over there, there's no shemen and no levona. And the Gemara answers hachi kamer. This is what it means to say. Kol menachos tunas shemes ulevona. All menachos require oil and frankincense, uvos menachitin, and they come from wheat. Ubos solas, and they come from fine flour. Minchas chote afapi she'ena tuuna shemen ulevona. Now the minchas chote, even though it doesn't require oil and frankincense, but ba menachitin, it does come from wheat. Ubos solas, and it comes from fine flour. And minchas ha'omer, when it comes to minchas ha'omer, afapi she'ba minas ha'orin, even though it comes from barley, but tuuna shemen ulevona, it does require oil and frankincense, uvah gerish, and it comes from a higher quality flour. V'zu eina tuuna lo shemen v'lo levona. But this one, meaning the minchas sota, it doesn't require oil, it doesn't require frankincense, frankincense, uva min ha'sa'orin, and it comes from barley, uba kemach, and it comes from an inferior kind of flour. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a Brai summary, Rabbi Shimon says, Bidinu shatei minchas chote tu'una shemen u'levon. Really, the minchas chote should require oil and frankincense, shelo yehe chote niskar, because we don't want it that the sinner should profit. Why should he bring less? On the contrary, we want to punish him. Umipnei ma eina tu'una, why it does not require shemen and levona, shelo yehe korbanim muhudir. We don't want him to have a nice korban. And similarly, uvedinu shetei chatas chaylev tu'una nesachim. Similarly, a chatas chaylev, which is essentially a regular carbon chatas. In the Torah, when they talk about a regular carbon chatas, they talk about the sin of eating chaylev, so it's called a chatas chaylev. Really, that should require nesachim, it should require libations. Again, shelo yehe chote niskar, so that the sinner shouldn't profit. Umipnei ma eina tu'una, and why doesn't it require the nesachim, shelo yehe korbanim muhudir, that he shouldn't have a nice carbon. Aval chataso shel mitzora v'ashama, but the carbon chatas and asham of a mitzora tu'una nesachim, those do require libations, lefi she'ein boin al chet, because those don't come on a sin. The Gemara says, is that really true? V'amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonasan. But Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani said that Rabbi Yonasan said, Al shiva devarim negoim boin v'chulu. On the following 7 things, that's why a person gets saras. And so you see that saras does come because of a sin. And the Gemara answers, Hasam over there, minigehu de chaperle. The kapara comes from the tzaras itself. The suffering of the tzaras is the kapara. Kimaisi carbon l'shtaruye bekachim would kamaisi. He's bringing a carbon, that's just to allow him to have kachim. That's not really part of the kapara, and that's why we're saying that it doesn't really come because of a sin, and it requires nesachim. But the Gemara says, but according to that, chatas nazir teitun nesachim. What about the carbon chatas brought by a nazir? That should require nesachim. L'fisha eina baal chet, because that doesn't come for a sin. And the Gemara answers to that, Savar lok Rebbe Lazar HaKafar. No, he holds like Rebbe Lazar HaKafar. The Amar Nazir Nami Chotehu. Rebbe Lazar HaKafar holds that a Nazir is a sinner, simply abstaining from the wine, that's considered to be a sin. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, Rabbi Gamliel Omer Kashem V'chulu. Rabbi Gamliel said, just like her actions were those of an animal, so too her carbon is the food of an animal. Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, Amar Lehen Rabbi Gamliel L'Chachamim. Rabbi Gamliel said to the Chachamim, so from scribes, Hanichu li, leave me vedrashena kamin chomer. I'm going to make a drasha for you. Kamin chomer, like chomer. There's various opinions what chomer is. Rashi says chomer, button bala is a button in Old French. V'hu shel zav, it's made out of gold. V'chos min bo, shnei tzavari cholik lanoi. So on the 2 sides of the neck, so the collar area, so they would put it on there. It would be an ornament, meaning to say, I have a drasha for you, a beautiful drasha. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tesvav Amud Beis.